Okay, it's that time of the morning again when I don't have reception. I don't have Glenn Beck on the radio because I only get the New York City stations for whatever reason. I'm going to be starting my new job after Pesach, and they don't have Glenn Beck on 94.3 The Talker in Pennsylvania anymore. I don't know what happened. I'm happy they still have it on this Hudson Valley station, but here I'm in Hudson Valley, don't get Glenn Beck. It was pretty interesting what he had to say this morning. Things I had no idea about. This whole story with McCabe, that this investigation had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It was actually started during the Obama administration. And how the media turns everything upside down. It's a game. It's really true what the president says about fake news. It's taka true. That they really do fake news. And there's no other way to explain this. All this being said, there was a few things I wanted to talk about today. I don't even remember everything. I had things in mind that I wanted to talk about, and I kind of forgot about them, and so therefore I'm just going to let this, free flow of consciousness, stream of consciousness go, and we'll see where it takes us. So I don't have anything planned to say right now, and I'm just letting go and letting God, and having faith that the right words will come out, and if they don't, so they won't. I saw a tweet yesterday, which is interesting because I talk a lot about Jung, even though I don't know that much about him. I'd like to study more Jung. I know Rabbi Bart Sadok is a big chassid of Jung, and everything I know about Jung I know from Rabbi Bart Sadok, except this, which I saw on Twitter from one of Moshe Weinberger's Talmidim, one of his real close chassidim, not like me, who I'm not so close with him as Zoivi Amol, like in high school 20 years ago. But he said that Jung said that all of his ideology and psychology and so forth was already discussed and revealed and discovered or whatever by the Mezritcher Maggid, by, he said, Rabbi Bear of Mezrich. Mezritcher Maggid. So that's I don't know what exactly he was talking about there, but I would like to figure that out. If anybody can point me into the right direction of what exactly, there's the Sefer Maggid of Yaakov. I never learned. You see quotes here and there from Aryeh Kaplan. So I'm quite curious about that. So if anybody has any comments, I know that Jung was very into Kabbalah. I didn't know he was into Hasidus also. I guess it's hard to be into Kabbalah these days without being into Hasidus. And so it's quite a fascinating thing. That reminds me a little bit of what I wanted to talk about. But before I do, I just wanted to discuss a little bit how my day went yesterday. I sat on a Bezdin for Geirus, and it was quite a very special spiritual day. It wasn't one of those days where I didn't feel anything like sometimes you have these spiritual feelings. This wasn't a day of spiritual feeling. It was a day of intellectual insight and inspiration to be a better person that I got out of my experiences yesterday. It's funny, at the end of the day, had something to eat, and I said Alamichya, and that Alamichya was maybe the most spiritual feeling I had all day, even though I was engaged in very spiritual activities. One thing, so my day basically yesterday, I went to West Orange, New Jersey, to sit on a Beis Din for Geras, to be on a rabbinical court for conversion. Following that, I went to pick up my Rav from Muncie. He's by his children, but he was dropped off somewhere else first, and I picked him up. It was the whole thing. And it was before I picked him up, I stopped at a grocery store, and I saw an old friend of mine who I went to yeshiva with, a person who really should be doing a lot more than he's doing. He's working in a grocery store, and I worked in a grocery store, and there's nothing wrong with working in a grocery store. I worked in a grocery store after I was a Rav in a shul. I worked in ShopRite in Monticello for a few months, just because I didn't really have what to do, and I would drive down to Virginia once a week to be a chaplain for 3 hours in Petersburg Federal Prison. And those 3 hours in Petersburg, I made more money than the whole week at ShopRite. But it was nice, and it was fun, it was interesting working in ShopRite. You know, you saw Rebbes walking through at ShopRite. That was you know, to me, the most interesting thing. I remember seeing the Dicklichberger, you know, who we see all the time from Woodburn, Rabbi Jungreis, and then you know, that's but you know, we see him all the time, so that's not. But the Hornsteipler from Flatbush used to be from Denver. I saw him in ShopRite going through a different line, and I said, "What's the Rebbe guy just the man line?" And the Rebbe said, "Ich bin du für jede eine." I asked him, "Rebbe, why don't you go in my line?" And he says, "I'm here for everyone." And there's a very tremendous depth in that. He's a very deep person, even though he's a funny guy. He's like chilled out, kind of a hippie, but he has tremendous depth to him. This Hornsteipler Rebbe from Flatbush. So then where I went, I picked up my Rav. He said everything was Hashgacha Pratis. The whole day was Hashgacha Pratis. So we went to the Vizhnitzer Rebbes are sitting shiva for their father. The Ramotla Vizhnitzer was a big tzaddik. I remember being by Ramotla a few times. I once gave a kvittel to him, more than once, I think. One time I remember very clearly giving him a kvittel, and I remember davening with him, going to Minyan, going to Tishin by him. And he is a very scary person, very frightening person. You know, I remember, very tough, very austere. All I remember, he was by his community in Kaimisha Lake, which is near our neighborhood in Gibbers. And I went with a friend of mine whose family were Vizhnitzer Hasidim in the Haim. And so he was interested to go in. And he asked, "Wie wollen Sie, where do you live?" I said, "Do in the country." Yeah, I go to the Vilansty. The Queens. Like, he was like kind of upset that I was learning in Queens. And that was it. And I kind of touched his hand, and he like shrunk back. He was kind of, I don't know if I heard him. He recently had an injury at the time. He fell in the mikveh or something. It was quite a scary situation, but you felt tremendous spirituality from this man. He was a very holy man. I have a patient who's a Vizhnitzer. Grew up in Vizhnitz, not really Vizhnitzer now, not from now, but this patient, asked me, "Do you think there's such a thing really as a holy person?" And this Ramotla Vizhnitzer, he was really a holy man. He was a scary holy man. Certain of the prophets in the Bible were scary people. Elisha Hanavi, they were making fun of him, you bald-headed man, these kids were making fun of him, and he called out some bears to eat them up. It's pretty scary. It's a scary story. Tzaddikim talk about this. So we went to his children. He had a lot of sons. I don't know, 7 or 8 sons, something like that. They're all Rebbes. Very wise of him to do that. He already had set them up all, where they're supposed to be. So, he had one there in Muncie, where he lived, and one in London, and one in Borough Park, and one in Montreal, one in Williamsburg, all over the whole, and one by us in Gibbers. So I took Rabbi Fishbane to go be Menachem Avel, and we were able to park right there because they let us go in, because I said, Chabdu in the car, white like a roof. And that's what got us first. They didn't want to they didn't see him, and then when they saw him, they let us in, and it was just a quick thing. Even though they wanted to have him sit and talk, it wasn't really. We were in a rush. We didn't have time for that, and so we went to Karenches and everything, and it was, you saw people, a lot of people there, and they, Bachrim, like giggling, smiles on their face. It's a Shiva house. It's kind of, you had big signs there, no pictures. So, part of the whole reason why you take a Rav, like, to go see a Rebbe who's been sitting Shivas, and there'll be pictures in the Hamadiyah and the Atet. So this we went L'Shem Shemaim. I tweeted about it. I can make a video about it. That'll make it more Megushim thing. But we couldn't get the pictures in the Hamadiyah because Ramat Levision was very against pictures. I remember it was one event that he attended, and he said, "This event I'll let you take pictures," because it meant so much to him. To be Mefarsim in this particular event. He was a real old-fashioned, very tough person. A very holy man. Very, very holy man. Very scary holy man. That was what television is. Very frum. Very, extreme, but also intelligent and down to earth, and understood the world, and I'm very friendly with his grandsons because they're the grandsons of my Rebbe, the Kaliver Rebbe. The Visions Rebbe from London was the son-in-law of my Rebbe, the Kaliver Rebbe. So I'm very close with that part of the Mishpach, even though I saw him there at the Shiva. I didn't really know him, but the London Rebbe. So it's and then whatever, went home, learned a little bit, but had very good questions on the Daf Yomi video. I chapped the ride. Vilner Gaon said, "Kavah to eat in the Torah." Did you set aside time for Torah? The word set aside, kava, is similar to what we see in the book of Malachi and Malachi, Sefer Malachi, that says, how do you steal from God if you take the Ma'aser or Truma, the tithes and the offerings? So it's the same word for setting. It's very similar. It's cognate to stealing. That did you steal aside time for Torah? And so I was waiting for Rabbi Fishbane a little bit, so I stole a few minutes to learn, and so we did the Amud Gemara, and there were excellent questions. I really want to thank Harbinger. If you're watching this video, don't feel bad for asking these questions. Please ask more questions. This is how we learn together, and sometimes I don't think about what I'm reading, and the importance of having clarity, really, of the difference between what is basically the halacha and what is right and wrong, because not everything that's legal is right. And this brings me back to two different issues that I kind of had in mind. Now, while I was driving to this Geirus, and when I came to the Geirus, one of the things I usually will tend to ask someone who's going to convert is to describe their religious background and describe, how they came to Judaism. This woman was Ecuadorian, and she's marrying an Israeli guy, and the Israeli guy really hates Israel. And who was this calling me from Florida? Well, they hung up, so and it's quite interesting. I was there with two other rabbis. One is senior rabbi, and one a younger rabbi, a bacher, who was assistant rabbi in the shul. And the three of us, the senior rabbi was certainly the most Zionist of the three, without any question. And he said he has several sons-in-law, and he has one who's Israeli. And he said, of all of his grandchildren, the one whose father is Israeli is the one who wants to least move to Israel. And so to this chasna coming up that we made the Geirus yesterday, he was from Israel. His mother was American, so he sounded like a regular American Jewish guy. Didn't sound Israeli at all. But so that's the story. That's the part of the story. So anyway, the Gioris, the Kala, she said, that her parents were Catholic, but they were not practicing. So then she went to Protestantism, and she had more questions than she had answers. And she came to Judaism, where she has answers. And I said, well, in Judaism we answer questions with questions. You'll have more questions too. But she felt that Judaism had all the answers, and she enjoyed learning more and more. And she was very impressed by Judaism. And she became convinced it's true. And it's interesting because she had undergone a Reform conversion, and it's so strange to me how here you have these are pretty right-wing people. It didn't seem like Reform was the right place for them. I don't know. Just saying. So anyway, we were able to take care of the Geirus, and when she said something about Christianity, she said it was like science fiction to her. And we never heard that term before, and I'm a big science fiction buff. And to hear that, it was kind of funny. It's interesting how there was the day the Earth still has a lot of Christological elements in it, and there was an episode of The Twilight Zone that was extremely Christological, with the little boy from Mexico, the alien. They killed the alien. But in light of that, I want to discuss something different. It was very interesting. I was listening on the way. Sometimes there's not very much on the radio on a Sunday, and my phone was like overheating, so it was too difficult. And I would, because I had the GPS on, so it was too difficult to really listen to something on the phone because it could knock out the GPS. I wanted to know where I was going, especially I was running out of gas, the whole thing. I was listening to a preacher on the radio, and he was talking about Yaakov Avinu and Yosef Atzadik, about Jacob and Joseph and all of this, and he was putting them down. He was really kind of insulting them, and it was offensive to me as a Jew to hear this. It didn't mean that I'm going to turn it off. I want to listen and hear what he had to say, and it remains offensive, and I feel that I'm properly offended by what he said, and I recognize we were discussing sitting by the Geiros, the difference between Judaism and Christianity and so forth, and I have a lot of respect for Christianity, but also obvious differences, and why I'm not a Christian. It's not just it really doesn't even come into my radar to even have a thought to become a Christian. But still, Christianity is a dominant religion, and to me, it's at least as influential as Shakespeare or or anything. It's more important than that, because it had influence on it's. I would compare it, to Rousseau and other, to things that had influence in the foundation of America, which I find to be very valuable. The existence of America as it was founded, not necessarily as it is today. Although we have a president who's trying to restore it, make it great again, return it back to the way it was founded. It doesn't mean with slavery and that all the horrible stuff that it had, but with the ideals of America. A lot of people get confused. I'm already at work, so there's not really, and I'm a few minutes late, so there's not really much time to talk about these ideas I want to say. But one thing, I said, one famous speaker, he's kind of controversial. He has some issues. I know people who are kind of victimized by him, but I still like him because, even if he has his Me Too hashtags around his name, so that's why I'm not going to mention his name, but he's an entertaining rabbi and so forth. So this particular rabbi, people probably know who it is when I say the quote. He says that why did God invent Mormons is so Christians should know how Jews feel. Because Mormons use the same terminology that Christians use. I mean, Mormons self-identify as Christians, but and it's not for me to say that they're not Christians, but most Christians will say that Mormons are not Christians because they're not Trinitarian and so forth. Certainly the Catholic Church, they could say we could have fellowship with Mormons just like we could have fellowship with Jews and Muslims, but the theology is radically different, so they're not recognized as Christians. For example, in the Catholic Church, the way most Protestants are recognized in the Catholic Church as fellow Christians. So they use the same terminology as other Christians to mean other things, and so too Christians and Mormons use the same terminology as Jews use to mean different things. And the big lesson that I think I felt out of this is the problem. This is why I'm not a Christian. This is the problem with Christianity, is that you can't learn from somebody who's perfect. You can't learn from Jesus because he's too perfect. He can't have any influence on a life because he's too perfect. From Jacob, whose life was not perfect, Jacob was called by our sages the best of the patriarchs, the Bechir Sheba Avos. He was the choicest of the, like a choice piece of steak, he was the best one. He was the chosen one. And people read the Bible, that Jacob, who did all these things, and the answer is, it's from someone who's not perfect is how you can learn how to really live. Someone who's holy and good, even if they're not perfect. That's how you can really learn how to live. And so from a Jacob, from a David, you can learn. Even from King Saul, you can't really learn because he was too perfect. And that's why that's, I would say, is the major difference between Judaism and Christianity, is that you have all of our teachers are not perfect, and that's how we're able to learn from them. Still, a lot of respect for Christianity. It's made the world a much better place. It's obviously much better than worshiping Zeus or something like that, or whatever. But it's